My name is Linda, and this is the story I never thought I would tell. It is a story about love, and family, and the quiet kind of heartbreak that does not scream, it simply settles inside you and waits. I remember the moment it happened. The moment my daughter looked at me with eyes I did not recognize, eyes that were once soft and full of trust, but now carried a distance so wide that I felt I could fall straight into it. It was early evening when she told us. The house was silent except for the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. My husband, John, stood beside me. We had just finished washing the dishes together, a small ritual that made our old age feel peaceful. And then Sarah, our daughter, our only daughter, the girl whose tiny fingers once curled around mine like I was her whole world, stood in our living room and said, in a voice that trembled but did not break. "Mom. Dad. I don't want you at my wedding." I smiled. Not because I agreed. Not because I didn't feel the pain. But because I did not want my daughter to see me fall apart. I did not want her to remember her wedding day as the day she broke her mother. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her hands were shaking. Her lips trembled. She would not lift her eyes to mine. And in that small silence, I felt something inside me shift. John reached for my hand, squeezing it gently, the way he always did when life became too heavy. But there was nothing he could do to soften the blow. I opened my mouth to speak, maybe to ask why, maybe to beg, but my voice refused to come out. Instead, I just nodded. Just once. A soft nod that felt like it carried the weight of my entire life. And I whispered, "If that's what you want, sweetheart, we will step back." She looked relieved. Not happy. Just relieved, like she had set down a burden she had carried too long. I watched her leave the room. I watched the door close. And I felt the quietest kind of heartbreak, a heartbreak that doesn't shatter, but slowly crumbles, like old paper drifting into dust. I did not know that her big day, the wedding we were not allowed to attend, would end in a way none of us expected. I did not know that everything she thought she understood about love, loyalty, and truth, would collapse in just a few seconds. But this is how the story begins. With a mother, and a smile she used to hide her tears. I want to take you back, before the wedding, before the tension, before the silence grew between us until it filled every corner of our home. I want you to understand who we were. My husband, John, is a gentleman. He is the kind of person who speaks softly, listens carefully, and loves quietly. He worked as a school bus driver for almost 30 years. Every child who rode on his bus remembers him for the same thing, his kindness. He always carried extra gloves in winter, just in case a child forgot theirs. He always kept tissues in the front seat. He was steady. Dependable. The kind of man who makes a home feel safe. I met him when I was 22. He walked into the diner where I worked and ordered a grilled cheese sandwich. He said he came there for lunch, but later he admitted it was because he wanted to see me again. We married a year later and built a simple life, nothing fancy, nothing grand. Just love, patience, and quiet strength. We had 2 children. Our son, Michael, came first. Then Sarah, 3 years later. Sarah was the softer one. The child who would run to me with drawings, who cried when she saw animals hurt, who hugged her teachers on the last day of school. Her heart was wide open, the kind of child who dreamed of warm kitchens, cozy homes, and families sitting around a table laughing. Michael was strong, independent, steady like his father. He grew into a protective older brother who always made sure Sarah was safe. Our home was small but always full of warmth. Birthdays, movie nights, noisy holidays, pancakes on Sunday mornings. I remember Sarah sitting on the kitchen counter swinging her legs while I cooked, telling me stories from school, laughing so loudly that even the neighbors smiled. Back then, if someone had told me that one day she would shut me out of the most important day of her life, I would have laughed. I would have said, not my Sarah. She is too tender for that. But life changes people in ways we cannot always see coming. The first change, the man she fell in love with. Sarah met David when she was 26. He worked in marketing, smart and confident, with a smile that seemed to win everyone over. When she brought him home for the first time, we welcomed him. I remember his firm handshake, his polite words, his practiced charm. He seemed kind, but something about him felt slightly distant, as though there was a wall between his heart and the rest of the world. Still, Sarah loved him. And because we loved her, we opened our home to him. But as months passed, I began to notice small things. Little glances. Little comments. Little walls being built around Sarah that had not been there before. She used to call me every evening. Now she called once a week. She used to come by the house to help me cook on Sundays. Now she came only when she had time. When I asked if everything was all right, she always said the same thing. Yes, Mom. I'm just busy. I wanted to believe her. I tried to believe her. But mothers feel things long before they understand them. John felt it too. He would say, maybe she's just finding her own life. Kids pull away before they settle again. Maybe he was right. Maybe I worried too much. But something in my heart felt uneasy. The engagement. The day Sarah got engaged, she called us to the park. She was glowing. Her hands shook with excitement as she showed me the ring. Mom, she whispered, I'm getting married. I hugged her so tight she could barely breathe. John's eyes filled with tears, though he tried to hide it. We celebrated. We called family. We planned dinner. But that night, after she left with David, as John and I were cleaning up the plates, he said softly. She didn't look at us the same way today. I froze. Because I had seen it too. A distance. A hesitation. Like she was trying to keep part of her life separate from us. I told myself it was just nerves. Just excitement. Just change. But change sometimes grows quietly, like a shadow stretching across the floor, inch by inch, almost unnoticed, until suddenly everything is dark. Wedding plans. Without us. At first, Sarah invited me to help with little things, colors, flowers, ideas. But each time I suggested something, she would say, David doesn't want that, or, we already talked about it, or, I'll let you know, Mom. Slowly, I stopped offering ideas. Slowly, she stopped involving me at all. One evening, she said in a hurried voice. Mom, I think it's better if we keep things simple. You don't need to stress about the planning. I smiled and said, okay. But inside, something small cracked. Michael noticed it too. He called me one night and said, Mom, Sarah's acting strange. Is everything okay? I told him not to worry. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was pulling her away from us. The silence that grew between us. A month before the wedding, Sarah stopped coming to our house. She still called, sometimes, but her voice felt far away. When I asked if we could meet for lunch, she always said she was busy. When I asked if she needed help with anything, she told me she had it under control. The last time I saw her before everything fell apart, she looked tired, as if she hadn't slept well in days. She hugged me quickly, without the long warmth she used to give. And when she left, there was a coldness in the room that stayed long after she was gone. I would sit at the kitchen table at night, remembering how she used to chatter while I cooked. I wondered when my daughter had become someone I could barely recognize. John would wrap his arm around my shoulder and whisper, give her time. She'll come back to us. But even he had a worry in his eyes he couldn't hide. The day she told us not to come. The moment she stood in our living room and told us we were not welcome at her wedding. I realized the distance had not been accidental. It had been growing on purpose. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of pressure. Maybe out of someone else's influence. I didn't know the reason. Not yet. All I knew was that my daughter, the girl who once asked me to braid her hair every morning before school, had shut us out. And I accepted it. Not because I wanted to. But because sometimes love means stepping back, even when it hurts. As Sarah left our home that evening, I felt something telling me that the story was not as simple as it looked. Something was wrong. Something deeper. Something she was not saying. But I didn't know that the truth would reveal itself in the most unexpected moment. And it would change everything. The days after Sarah told us not to come to her wedding felt strangely quiet. The kind of quiet that does not come from peace, but from something inside you settling into a new shape, a shape you did not choose. I moved through the house softly, almost as if I were afraid to disturb the air around me. Every room held a memory of Sarah, her childhood drawings tucked into old drawers, her favorite mug in the kitchen cabinet, a few photographs framed on the hallway wall. Each memory felt warm, but each one also hurt. John tried to keep things normal. He made coffee every morning. He watered the plants. He talked about small things, the weather, the neighborhood, the grocery list. But even his gentle habits felt a little heavier, a little slower. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a show we were not really paying attention to, he leaned forward and rubbed his hands together the way he always did when he was trying to make sense of something. "Linda," he said softly, "do you think we did something wrong?" That question had been living inside me too. It was a question only parents ask themselves, even when they know the answer may hurt. "I don't know," I whispered. Maybe something changed, and we didn't see it." John shook his head slowly. "We raised her with love. We were always there. I don't understand why she would push us away like this." Neither did I. The truth was, every time I thought about Sarah's wedding, the wedding we were not allowed to attend, I felt a small ache settling in the center of my chest. But what hurt even more was the feeling that Sarah was carrying something alone, something she wouldn't share. The first hint something was wrong. 3 days after the conversation in our living room, I got a call from Michael. His voice was low, almost tired. "Mom, can I come over?" "Of course," I said immediately. When he arrived, he didn't even take off his coat. He walked into the living room and stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, staring outside as though he was trying to find answers in the sky. "Something's off," he finally said. "Sarah isn't herself. She sounds scared every time I talk to her." My heart tightened. I asked, "Scared of what?" "I don't know," he said. "But I don't think this wedding is what she really wants. Or, maybe she wants it, but something else is happening around her." I waited, watching him, the worry rising inside me like slow-moving water. Michael sighed and turned toward me. "David is controlling," he said quietly. "I've seen the way he talks to her. The way she changes her tone when he enters the room. It's like she's afraid to say the wrong thing." A heaviness settled in my stomach. I had seen it too, in small moments, but I had pushed it away. Michael continued, "Yesterday, I told Sarah I'd walk her down the aisle if Dad wasn't up for it. She looked like she wanted to cry. But instead she said, 'Michael, please don't make things harder.'" "Harder?" I repeated. He nodded. "She's protecting someone. Or she's protecting something." I thought about Sarah's distant eyes. Her short visits. Her nervous smile. Her quick hugs. Pieces of the puzzle were starting to gather, but the picture still felt blurry. A visit from someone unexpected. It was late afternoon when the doorbell rang. John was in the backyard trimming the bushes. I opened the door and found Emily standing on our porch. Emily was Michael's wife, kind, steady, warm-hearted. She rarely came over without him, so the sight of her alone made me feel instantly uneasy. "Can I talk to you?" "Alone?" she asked gently. I nodded and led her inside. She sat at the kitchen table, folding her hands together, her face pale. "Linda," she began, "I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't want to interfere. But now I think you need to know, something is wrong with Sarah." The words hung in the air like cold wind. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Emily hesitated, as if deciding how much to share. "I saw her a few days ago," she said. "We met at a coffee shop." She looked exhausted, and she kept checking her phone. When David called her, her whole body tensed. Her voice changed. She sounded afraid. My breath caught. Emily leaned closer. "I don't think this wedding is her choice." "Not entirely." A soft buzzing filled my ears, the way it does when the world around you suddenly shifts. Emily continued, she told me she feels trapped." But before she could explain, David walked in. He put his arm around her shoulders so tightly it almost looked painful. And she stopped talking. She just shut down. My hands shook as I held my mug. Emily's eyes softened as she reached for my hand. "Linda, maybe she pushed you away because she's trying to protect you. Maybe David doesn't want you there. Maybe he's the one who told her to say it." A chill moved through my body. I thought back to the night Sarah told us not to come. The way her voice trembled. The way she couldn't meet my eyes. Had she been forced to say it? Had she been afraid to tell us the truth? I felt something deep in my chest, fear, love, and sorrow tangled in one painful knot. The message that changed everything. That night, around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message. From Sarah. It said, "Mom. I'm sorry. Please don't ask questions. I just need you to trust me. Please." Short. Broken. Wrong. I stared at the message for a long time. I wanted to call her. I wanted to drive to her apartment. I wanted to pull her into my arms and ask her what she was running from. But something in her words told me not to push. Something told me she was speaking from a place of fear. When John woke and asked what was wrong, I handed him the phone. He read the message slowly, his brows knitting together in a deep worry I had not seen in years. "We need to keep an eye on her," he said. "She's not okay." I nodded. But deep down, I felt helpless. A mother always wants to fix things. To protect. To step in. To fight the storm for her child. But Sarah wasn't letting me in. She had closed the door, and I did not know how to open it again without breaking her trust. The day before the wedding. The day before the wedding felt heavy, as if the whole world had put on an extra layer of silence. John and I tried to keep busy. We cleaned the house, even though it didn't need cleaning. We cooked a simple dinner. We sat together at the table, but neither of us ate much. Every few minutes, one of us would look at the clock. As if waiting for something. A call. A message. A sign. But none came. Late in the afternoon, Michael called. "I saw Sarah," he said. She looked distant. She barely spoke. And when I asked if she was happy, she said she was fine, but the way she said it, "Mom," it felt wrong. "How wrong?" I asked quietly. Michael paused. Like someone was holding her heart in their hands. My hand covered my mouth as tears rose. He continued softly, "I think she's scared to call off the wedding. I think she's scared of what David will do." My heart dropped. "Do you think he hurts her?" I whispered. Michael didn't answer at first. Then, in a low voice, "I think he controls her. And fear can feel a lot like pain, even without bruises." A shiver ran through me. I thanked him and hung up. When I turned toward John, he was already watching me, reading the worry on my face. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "is her wedding, and she doesn't even look happy." I sat down on the edge of the bed, tears finally escaping. "She doesn't want us there," I whispered. "But now I'm starting to think it's not her decision at all." John sat beside me and held my hand. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we will be here for her. No matter how far she runs. No matter what she hides. We will be here." His words were a small comfort. But they did not ease the ache. The morning of the wedding. The morning arrived with an uneasy stillness. The sky was gray. The house was cold. And my heart felt heavy in a way I cannot explain. I should have been helping Sarah get ready. I should have been adjusting her veil, brushing her hair, telling her how beautiful she looked. But instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched cup of tea. John sat across from me, the newspaper folded but unread. Around 9 a.m., Michael came over. He looked restless, running his hands through his hair. "I think something is going to happen today," he said. "What do you mean?" John asked. "I don't know. But Sarah didn't answer any of my calls. Not even a text back. She never does that." A cold worry crept through me. Michael continued, "I'm going to be at the ceremony. I won't cause trouble. I need to be there. I need to know she's okay." I nodded slowly. Even though Sarah told us not to come, I understood Michael's decision. He turned to me. "Mom," he said gently, "if anything feels wrong, I'll tell you right away. And I won't let her be alone." I hugged him tightly, praying silently in my heart. After he left, the house fell into silence again. Each minute felt longer than the last. At noon, I walked into Sarah's old bedroom. Her childhood posters were still on the walls. Her favorite stuffed bear sat on the bed. I sat down and held it against my chest. "How did we get here?" I whispered to myself. A wedding should be a celebration. A joining of families. A moment of joy. But this one felt like a storm gathering, silent but dangerous. I did not know what would happen next. I only knew that my daughter was walking into something she was not ready for. Something she did not choose freely. And I feared that once she stepped into it, she might never come back the same. The unexpected call. At 1:17 p.m., my phone rang. It was Michael. My heart stopped. I answered quickly, "Michael. What is it? Is she okay?" He breathed heavily on the other end, as if he had been running. "Mom, something happened." My hands shook uncontrollably. "What happened? Tell me." He paused, gathering his breath. And then he said the words that made my world tilt sideways. "Mom, the wedding didn't happen. It ended before it even began." Michael's words hit me like cold water, shocking my breath out of my chest. The wedding didn't happen. For a moment, I could not understand them. They felt too unreal, too heavy, too sudden. My mind tried to grasp the shape of them, but they slipped through, leaving only confusion and fear behind. John, who had been sitting beside me, leaned forward, his eyes wide, trying to read my face. "What happened?" he whispered. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, my voice trembling. "Michael, what do you mean it didn't happen? What happened to Sarah?" I heard him inhale shakily, as though steadying himself. "Mom, listen. I'm outside the wedding hall. You won't believe what just happened. But Sarah is safe. She's okay. Shaken, but okay. Safe. That was the only word that kept me from falling apart completely. I closed my eyes, relief and panic mixing in a strange, dizzying way. Where is she now? I whispered. She's inside, with the wedding coordinator. She's crying, Mom. She said she wants to come home. She said she wants you. My hand covered my mouth as tears filled my eyes. John stood up slowly, watching me with fear creeping across his face. What happened? He asked again, louder this time. I opened my mouth, but my voice shook too much to explain. Instead, I gripped the phone tighter. Michael, tell me what exactly happened. Please. There was a pause. Then, in a quiet voice filled with disbelief, he said. David walked out on her. Right before the ceremony. He told her he couldn't do it. He left her standing there in her wedding dress. My breath caught. For a moment, the world around me fell into silence as I tried to absorb the truth. David left her. He left her at the altar. He abandoned her on the day she needed love the most. Sarah, my sweet Sarah, had been left alone in the most painful way a woman can be left. A sharp ache spread through my chest. I whispered, "Oh God, my baby." Michael continued, "It wasn't just that, Mom. He said awful things. He told her she was too emotional. Too dependent. Too much work. He blamed her for everything." I felt a tear fall onto my hand. John placed his hand on my shoulder, gripping it gently but firmly. "I'm coming to get her," Michael said firmly. "She asked for you. She wants to come home." Those words, "she wants to come home," broke something inside me in the softest, deepest way. "Bring her," I whispered, wiping my face. "Please, bring her home." The drive home. John and I stood near the window, watching the street, waiting for Michael's car to appear. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. John's hand rested on my back, moving in slow circles. He always did that when I was overwhelmed, just as he had done through every difficult moment in our marriage. As we waited, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, because Sarah had reached out. Fear, because she was hurting more than I ever imagined. Guilt, because I had not been there for her. But above all, love. A mother's love that stretches and bends and breaks and repairs itself over and over again. After what felt like an eternity, Michael's car turned the corner. I saw her through the window. Sarah. Still in her wedding dress. My hand flew to my heart. She sat curled in the back seat, her head leaning against the window. Her veil was gone. Her hair was tangled. Her makeup streaked across her cheeks. She looked like a girl who had been asked to carry a pain much too heavy for her shoulders. John whispered, "Oh, sweetheart." I didn't wait. I rushed to the door and pulled it open just as Michael helped her out of the car. "Mom," Sarah whispered in a trembling voice. And she collapsed into my arms. A daughter's breakdown. I held her tightly, the lace of her dress scratching against my skin as she cried into my shoulder. Her whole body shook, the sobs coming from a place so deep it felt like they had been trapped for months, maybe years. "I'm sorry, Mom," she cried. "I'm so sorry." "No, sweetheart," I whispered, running my fingers through her hair. "You don't owe us an apology. You're home now. That's all that matters." She clung to me as if she were afraid I might disappear if she let go. John gently wrapped his arms around both of us. "We're here, honey," he said softly. "We're not going anywhere." Michael stood nearby, his eyes full of protective anger and heartbreak. We stayed like that for several minutes, holding her, supporting her, letting her cry until the storm inside her had at least softened. When Sarah finally lifted her head, Her voice was barely above a whisper. He left me, Mom, he left me in front of everyone. I stroked her cheek gently. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. She shook her head frantically. No, you don't understand. He didn't just leave. He blamed me. He told me I drove him away. He said I was too emotional. Too sensitive. Too difficult. Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt anger rise inside me, not loud anger, but the quiet kind that comes when someone hurts your child. But I kept my voice gentle. You are none of those things, Sarah. You are soft-hearted. You are loving. You are human. And anyone who can't handle that doesn't deserve you. She cried again, covering her face with her hands. I feel so stupid. I thought he loved me. John knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in his big, steady ones. Sarah, sweetheart, love doesn't walk away like that. Love doesn't make you small. Love doesn't break you. Her chin trembled as she looked at him. But I pushed you away, she whispered. I hurt you. I told you not to come. I let him convince me that you would judge us. That you were controlling. That you didn't want me to be happy. Her voice cracked again. Tears slid down my cheeks, but I kept my voice steady for her. Sarah, we were never angry with you. We were worried. We love you. That didn't change for a single second. She collapsed against me again, sobbing softly. I felt trapped, Mom. He told me I was lucky he chose me. He told me no one else would be patient with me. He said he was all I had. My heart broke. These were not the words of love. These were the seeds of control. Fear. Isolation. Dependence. I whispered, you have us. You have always had us. And you always will. She held onto my shirt tightly, her tears warm against my shoulder. Unraveling the truth. After a while, we helped her inside. She walked slowly, as if each step reminded her of what she had just survived. We wrapped her in one of John's soft sweaters, and she sat curled on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. Michael sat on the armchair across from her, leaning forward. Sarah, he said gently, when did things start going wrong? She wiped her face and took a shaky breath. Months ago, she whispered. But I kept making excuses for him. I kept telling myself he was stressed. That I needed to be more understanding. That love meant being patient. I nodded, listening carefully. She continued, but then he started deciding everything. What I wore. Who I talked to. How often I visited you. He said my family made me weak. He said you were too emotional, Mom. And that Dad was too protective. I felt something twist inside me. He told me that if I wanted a marriage, I had to let him lead. He said independence was selfish. He said I had to let go of my old life. John swallowed hard. I didn't leave because I didn't love you, Sarah whispered. I left because he made me feel like choosing you was betraying him. I reached for her hand. You never betrayed us, I whispered. You were trying to survive something you didn't know how to name. Her eyes filled with tears. And today, right before the ceremony, he told me he couldn't marry someone who needed so much reassurance. He said I was a burden. Then he walked away. She covered her face again. I didn't even know how to breathe. John moved beside her. You're safe now, he said gently. You're home. She nodded, but the fear in her eyes lingered. Mom, she whispered, I'm scared there's something wrong with me. I cupped her face gently with both hands. There is nothing wrong with you. Not one thing. Someone convinced you that your softness was weakness. But it is your greatest strength. Her lips trembled. I don't want to go back there, she whispered. I don't ever want to see him again. You won't, Michael said firmly. Not unless you choose to. She shook her head. I choose to stay here, with you. I don't want to be alone. You're not alone, I whispered. You never were. A quiet realization. As the hours passed, Sarah slowly calmed. Her breaths grew deeper. Her shoulders unclenched. The trembling in her hands faded. But there was still something else in her eyes, something like shame. When John stepped into the kitchen to make tea, and Michael left to pick up a change of clothes from her apartment, Sarah and I sat together in the quiet living room. She looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen in months. Mom, she whispered, did you hate me for telling you not to come? My chest ached. No, I said gently. Never. I only worried for you. I missed you. But I never hated you. She looked down at her hands. I hated myself for saying it. But he told me you would ruin the wedding. He said you would judge him. He said you didn't approve. I shook my head slowly. Sweetheart, your happiness is all we ever wanted. She swallowed hard. I know that now, but I didn't then. I couldn't see clearly. I squeezed her hand. Sometimes love makes us blind. Sometimes fear makes us quiet. But clarity always returns, when we come home. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I'm sorry for everything, she whispered. I kissed her forehead. You came back. That's what matters. We sat there for a long time, mother and daughter, holding a quiet that felt fragile but hopeful. Sarah slept for nearly 12 hours after she came home. It was the kind of sleep people fall into when their hearts are too heavy to stay awake any longer, deep, uneven, and thick with exhaustion. I checked on her several times throughout the night. Each time, she lay curled beneath the blanket, her breathing steady but fragile, like she might break if the world whispered too loudly. John stayed awake on the couch, as if keeping watch just outside her door. He said he didn't want to miss the moment she woke up in case she needed something. That was just the kind of father he was, quiet, steady, and always there even when no one noticed. By morning, the house felt different. It felt full again, like a light had been turned back on in the hallway we thought would stay dark forever. I brewed coffee, cooked a simple breakfast, and waited. When Sarah finally walked into the kitchen, wrapped in one of John's old sweaters, her face looked softer, still tired, still bruised by yesterday, but no longer shattered. She sat down quietly at the table. I poured her a cup of tea. For a long moment, we just sat together, the warm steam rising between us. Then Sarah whispered, "Thank you, for not giving up on me." My throat tightened. "We never could," I whispered back. Not for a single moment. Letting her speak. Sarah picked up the cup, holding it with both hands as if the warmth steadied her. "I keep replaying everything," she said softly. "How I pushed you away. How I believed things that weren't true. How I let my world shrink so small I could barely breathe." I reached across the table and touched her hand. "You were not weak," I said gently. "You loved someone who made you doubt yourself. That's not weakness. That's trust misplaced." She looked down, tears gathering in her lashes. "I didn't realize how much I missed being home," she whispered. "I didn't realize how far away I had drifted." My heart ached. "Sometimes," I told her, "we lose our way so we can understand the value of coming back." She nodded slowly. Then, in a trembling voice, she said something that felt like a quiet confession. "I thought he was all I deserved." My breath caught. "Why?" I asked softly. She swallowed. Because he said it so many times. He said I was too sensitive, too emotional, too needy. He told me no one else would put up with me. That my family enabled me. That I depended on people too much. Her fingers tightened around the cup. He made me believe I had to earn love, that love wasn't something I deserved just for being me. I leaned forward and took her hands in mine. Sweetheart, I whispered, love is not something you earn by shrinking yourself. Love is something you receive because your heart is worth receiving. A tear rolled down her cheek. She whispered, I didn't know that. I know, I murmured. But now you do. Michael's visit. Later that afternoon, Michael came by with groceries. When he saw Sarah sitting at the table in her pajamas, he smiled with relief. There she is, he said gently. You look better. Sarah gave him a small smile. I feel lighter, she said. Michael sat beside her. You scared me, he admitted. I didn't know how far things had gotten. She nodded. I didn't either, she whispered. Not until yesterday. Not until he left, and I realized I wasn't sad he was gone. I was scared of what was left of me. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not ruined, he said softly. You're healing. Sarah wiped her eyes. I don't want to go back to how things were, she said. I want to rebuild myself. Slowly, carefully. And you will, I said. And we'll help you. Every step. A silence settled, warm, gentle, full of understanding. The fear of seeing him again. Even though Sarah felt calmer, fear still lived in the corners of her eyes. The fear of what came next. The fear of facing the world again. The fear of seeing him again. While Michael was helping John in the yard, Sarah looked at me and whispered. Mom, what if he tries to come back? My stomach tightened. What do you want to happen? I asked her. I don't ever want him near me again, she said quickly. But I'm scared he'll show up to apologize. And I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I won't fall into old patterns. I nodded slowly. Fear of returning to what hurt us is a powerful fear, one many people never speak aloud. You won't be alone, I told her. If he tries to come back, we will handle it together. You won't have to face him. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. You really think I can be strong again, she whispered. I think you already are, I said. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just choosing not to go back. She breathed out slowly. Then I choose to move forward. John's gentle wisdom. That evening, John sat beside her in the living room. He was never a man of many words, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. Sarah, he said softly, I need you to know something. She looked at him. When you were little, he said, you used to hold my hand so tight whenever you crossed the street. You trusted me to keep you safe. But somewhere along the way, I think you forgot that safety isn't just about holding on to someone. It's about knowing when to let go of someone who pulls you into danger. Sarah blinked, tears gathering in her eyes again. John continued, letting go of him wasn't a failure. It was the bravest thing you've done. She wiped her face and whispered, I wish I had heard you sooner. John shook his head with a soft smile. You heard us exactly when you needed to. Sarah moved into his arms and hugged him tightly. John kissed the top of her head and whispered, You are home, sweetheart. You are safe. Facing the leftover pain. One night, a few days later, I heard Sarah crying quietly in her room. I walked in gently and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her wedding dress folded beside her. I don't know what to do with it, she said, her voice trembling. I sat beside her. You don't have to decide today, I told her. She shook her head. It's not the dress. It's what it represents. I look at it and I remember how much I ignored. How much I let myself believe. How much I gave up. Her voice broke. I took her hand. Sometimes, I said softly, the things that break us were never meant for us. That dress wasn't your story. It was just a moment. And moments can be released. She looked at me with teary eyes. How do I let it go? One small piece at a time, I whispered. Healing isn't fast. It's gentle. It's patient. It's slow. She nodded, her breathing calming. Then she whispered something that made my heart swell. Maybe someday I'll fall in love in a healthier way. I kissed her forehead. You will. But for now, just focus on loving yourself. A mother's quiet observation. As the days turned into a full week, I saw something beautiful forming slowly inside Sarah. She laughed a little more. She ate her meals without forcing herself. She stepped outside into the sunlight instead of hiding in the dark. She slept without waking from fear. Her healing wasn't a straight line, not at all. Some days she cried again. Some days she missed the version of David she had imagined. Some days she felt embarrassed about what she tolerated. But each time she stumbled, she stood up again, with a little more strength. And each time she stood, I saw her becoming someone braver, softer, wiser. I realized something. Pain had not destroyed her. Pain had refined her. The letter she needed to write. One morning, Sarah came downstairs holding a notebook. I need to write something, she said. A letter I won't send, but a letter I need to say. She sat at the table, opened the notebook, and began to write. I didn't read it, but I saw the tears fall as she wrote. I saw her hand tremble. I saw her pause, breathe, gather herself, and continue. When she finished, she closed the notebook gently. I forgave him, she whispered. Not for him. For me. My eyes softened. That is how freedom begins, I said. A dinner that felt like a beginning. A week after the wedding that wasn't, we had dinner together, Michael, Emily, John, Sarah, and me. We talked. We laughed. We shared stories Sarah hadn't heard in months. At the table, Sarah looked around, her eyes warm. I forgot what this felt like, she murmured. Being loved without conditions. Emily reached for her hand. That's what family is, she said. Love without fear. Sarah's eyes glistened, but she smiled. I'm grateful, she whispered. For all of you. For coming back to myself. The true resolution. Later that night, when everyone had gone home and the dishes were washed, Sarah hugged me as she prepared to go to sleep. Mom, she whispered, I'm starting to feel like myself again. I cupped her cheeks gently. That's the most beautiful thing you've said. She smiled softly. And I'm not ashamed anymore, she added. I'm not ashamed that I fell for the wrong person. I'm not ashamed that I stayed too long. I'm not ashamed that I came home. I kissed her forehead. You should never be ashamed of surviving. She leaned into me, resting her head against my chest. Thank you, she whispered again. For loving me back to life. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the softness of the moment. You saved yourself, I whispered. We just gave you a place to land. There is a gentle silence that settles in a home after a storm has passed. Not the kind of silence filled with fear or tension. But the kind of silence that feels like healing. Soft. Warm. Honest. That is the silence we grew into in the weeks after Sarah returned home. She spent her days rebuilding little things, her routines, her confidence, her smile. And I spent my days quietly watching the strength return to her step, the steadiness to her breath, the hope to her eyes. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and pink, Sarah wrapped her sweater tighter around her shoulders and whispered, "I think I'm ready to forgive myself." Those words touched something deep inside me. So many people spend their lives forgiving others, but never themselves. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I asked gently. She looked out toward the horizon. "I blamed myself for everything. For missing the signs. For staying too long. For leaving you. For believing him. For letting myself be small." She paused. "But I'm starting to understand. I didn't know better. I was trying. I was loving. I was hoping. I was just human." I nodded, my eyes warming. "And being human," I whispered, "is not something you ever need forgiveness for." She smiled softly. A real smile this time. The kind that lifts from the heart, not just from the lips. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know what I realized?" she asked. "What's that?" "That falling apart doesn't mean the story is over. Sometimes it's just the chapter that teaches you how strong you still are." I wrapped my arm around her. "Yes," I said. "And sometimes the ending you thought was breaking you is actually the beginning of something new." She breathed in slowly, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. "I'm not afraid anymore," she murmured. "Of him?" I asked. "No," she said gently. "Of myself. Of being alone. Of choosing wrong again. I'm not afraid because I know I can come home. I know I have people who love me." My heart softened in the quietest, deepest way. "That's all we ever wanted," I said. "Not to control your life. Not to tell you who to love. Just to make sure you always had a safe place to return to." She turned to look at me, her eyes reflecting the pale colors of sunset. "You did," she whispered. "You always did." A soft lesson for the heart. In the months that followed, Sarah grew into a stronger version of herself. Someone who knew her own worth. Someone who spoke gently but firmly. Someone who chose people who chose her back. She enrolled in a weekend class she always wanted to take. She reconnected with old friends. She smiled without forcing it. I watched her laugh again, really laugh. The sound was like a window opening for the first time after winter. And though the wound of what happened still lived inside her, it no longer controlled her. It no longer defined her. She was healing. And healing isn't loud. Healing is quiet footsteps, soft breaths, small victories. Healing is waking up one day and realizing the pain is still there. But it no longer scares you. The final reflection. Sometimes, late at night, I sit alone in the living room and think about everything we went through. The night Sarah told us not to come to her wedding. The fear in her eyes. The silence between us. The phone call that changed everything. The moment she walked back into our home in her wedding dress, broken but brave. And I think about this one truth. You cannot lose a child who still remembers where home is. Distance does not erase love. Mistakes do not erase love. Fear does not erase love. Love, real love, waits. Love opens its door even when it hurts. Love whispers, "Come in," even when the heart is trembling. And when Sarah came back, she reminded me of something I had forgotten. Sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the endings we never wanted. Closing words. If you are listening to this and you feel lost. If someone has made you believe you are hard to love. If you have drifted away from the people who care for you. Please remember this. You are not broken. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are human. And you deserve softness. You deserve a place to rest. You deserve a love that never asks you to shrink. Just like Sarah. You can come home to yourself. To your own heart. One quiet step at a time. And when the day comes that you rise again, you will see what she finally saw. You were worthy all along. You were enough all along. And you were loved all along.